Welcome back to the deep dive. I want to start today with a concept, the idea of a voice.
Okay.
And I don't just mean, the sound you make. I mean a voice as a piece of history, a voice that carries a nation's story, its pain, its refusal to be silenced.
It's a powerful idea.
Yeah.
History isn't just what's in a textbook, right? It starts with someone speaking up, someone refusing to let things go forgotten.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's our whole focus today because we're looking at a man who was, for many, exactly that kind of voice. We're doing a deep dive into Sardar Sukhminder Singh Hansra.
And it's a really timely conversation to be having.
It is. Looking at the calendar, he passed away on this very day, February 19th, back in 2022.
So the legacy is still very fresh.
Yeah.
And honestly, the more I dug into these sources, the more I realized just how huge his impact was.
Well, that's the thing. When we started this, the file just said journalist, but then you see the sheer amount of material.
Yeah.
The broadcasting, the activism, even music.
Right.
Calling him just a journalist is like calling a firefighter a water enthusiast. It just doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't get it.
That's a great way to put it. A journalist has a job. You file your story, you go home. Hansra was something else. The sources call him a broadcaster, a freedom fighter, an artist.
There's one phrase from our research that just jumped out at me, media warrior. It sounds like a contradiction, doesn't it? A warrior has a sword, a journalist has a pen. But I think our mission today is to figure out what that really means. How do you go from just reporting the news to becoming?
Oh, that. I think it all comes down to his core motivation.
Yeah.
He wasn't building a career, he was building a mission. And his whole philosophy seems to be built on this one idea. If you lose your media, you lose your narrative.
And if you lose your narrative?
You lose your future. It's that simple and that profound.
Okay, so let's get into how he fought that battle. The sources say that for Hansra, broadcasting was a form of seva.
Right. And for anyone familiar with the term, seva usually means selfless service. You think of the community kitchen, the langar, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Physical work, volunteering, media as seva is. It's a different frame.
It's a fascinating way to look at it. He saw his work not as a way to get famous or make money, but as his duty, as a form of resistance against being silenced. And you have to remember, his whole mindset was framed by this idea that Punjab is a spirit, not just a place.
Punjab is a spirit. I have that highlighted like 3 times in my notes.
It's key. It means the identity isn't tied to a map. It can exist anywhere, Toronto, London, California. But to keep that spirit alive, especially when you're scattered across the globe, you need a signal.
You need a platform.
You need a platform. And that brings us to his most iconic work, the program Ankhila Punjab.
This thing was an institution. It ran for over 12 years on Vision TV in Canada. I mean, in television, 12 years is an eternity.
It is. It became maybe the most recognized Sikh and Punjabi public affairs show in the diaspora. But what's really interesting is how the sources talk about the TV show versus the radio show.
Oh yeah, this part stood out to me. TV gives you the visuals, obviously, you need to see the footage. But they describe the radio show as having this closeness, this intimacy.
Well, that's audio for you, isn't it?
Mm.
I mean, think about it. It's the 90s, early 2000s. You're an immigrant. Maybe you're driving a truck, working at a factory, or you're at home making dinner. You can't just sit and watch a screen.
But the radio's on in the background. It's the companion.
It's the companion, exactly. His voice wasn't just on a screen on the wall. It was in the car with you. It was in the kitchen.
It's like he was sitting at the table with the family.
That's the feeling.
Yeah.
And because he had that intimacy, he could do something very specific. He could educate. The sources are really clear. This was not entertainment.
It was awareness.
It was awareness. He was using the platform
right
to make sure Sikh history wasn't being rewritten or watered down.
That phrase, watered down, comes up a lot. It feels like his greatest fear was dilution. That the sharp edges of history would get smoothed over as people assimilated.
And that's a real fear for any diaspora. You forget the hard parts to fit in. Hansra was like a dam against that. He was using the microphone as a weapon against historical erasure.
Speaking of erasure, we have to talk about what is, I think, the most significant part of his legacy. This is where the term warrior really clicked for me. His connection to the human rights activist Shaheed Jaswant Singh Khalra.
This is the absolute pivotal moment.
Yeah.
You can't understand Hansra without understanding the sheer bravery of what Khalra was doing.
So for anyone who doesn't know, Khalra was the one who found the smoking gun on state violence in Punjab, right?
He found more than a gun. He found the graveyard. Khalra located official government records, Crematorium records, proving thousands of young Sikh men were picked up by police, killed, and then cremated in secret as unidentified.
The numbers are they're staggering. The sources say over 25,000 cases.
Over 25,000. Just let that number sink in. These weren't accidents. This was a system to make people disappear and hide the evidence.
And Khalra was walking around with this information. I mean, the danger.
A massive target on his back. And this is where Hansra comes in. He didn't just report on this from a safe distance in Canada. He intervened.
He brought him onto the world stage.
He did. He was instrumental in facilitating Khalra's visit to Canada, getting him in front of parliamentarians. He knew that this evidence had to get out of India. It had to be on the international record.
And he did that interview.
Yes. And this is so critical. He conducted this rare, high-quality, long-form interview where Khalra didn't just give a soundbite. He laid out the evidence. He explained the whole system of disappearances.
And we all know the tragic end to that story. Khalra went back to Punjab.
And he was abducted and murdered by the police. The very people he was exposing, they silenced him.
But,
and it's huge but, because of Sukhminder Singh Hansra, they could not silence the evidence.
The interview, the tape.
That tape. It stopped being just a piece of media. It became testimony. It became evidence preserved against a state that literally murdered the witness.
That just perfectly illustrates media as resistance. Without that interview, without that trip he helped organize, Khalra's specific, detailed voice, it might have vanished with him.
It's a terrifying thought. It shows you that a camera, a microphone, in the right hands, they're incredibly powerful tools. Hansra made sure the truth outlived the man.
Now, to do that kind of work, you have to be driven by something really powerful, a deep belief. And the sources are very clear on what Hansra's political foundation was. He was a lifelong advocate for Khalsa Raaj.
Yes, and it's important to understand what he meant by that. Khalsa Raaj is the vision of a sovereign Sikh homeland, Khalistan. For Hansra, this wasn't just a political talking point. It was about historical justice.
His argument was centered on this idea of the transfer of power, right? Can you kind of break that down?
Sure. So the simple history is that in 1947, the British left and India was free. Hansra's analysis was that for Sikhs, it wasn't that simple. He argued that Sikhs were a sovereign people who were first conquered by the British, and then, in his view, their sovereignty was handed over to a Hindu-dominated Indian state.
So not liberation, but a change of rulers.
That was his view. He saw 1947 as a betrayal, and he would often point to the numbers.
Right, about the sacrifices.
Exactly. He'd point out that Sikhs were less than 2% of the population, but made up, by some estimates, over 80% of those executed or jailed for life by the British fighting for India's freedom.
So the argument is, we paid the ultimate price for freedom, but then we're treated like second-class citizens.
That was the core of his argument, that instead of getting an equal share, they faced state violence and suspicion. And because of that, he saw sovereignty Khalsa Raaj as a necessity for survival, a way to ensure what happened to people like Khalra could never happen again.
And he was consistent on this, because people in media can sometimes, they can shift with the political winds.
That seems to be one of his defining features.
Yeah.
He spoke this truth for decades, regardless of criticism, regardless of pressure to be more mainstream. It wasn't a performance for him. It was a fundamental belief.
It's fascinating how he used so many different channels for this belief. We've talked about the journalist, the activist, but then I had this part in the notes that completely surprised me. The man was a singer.
A multifaceted artist, yeah. He released songs on cassette tapes.
I just love that. This serious political broadcaster, also, dropping mixtapes. I'm guessing they weren't love songs, though.
No, not at all. His music was just as political as his journalism. The sources say his musical output really ramped up after 1984, after the attack on the Sri Darbar Sahib.
So it was art born from trauma.
Absolutely. He used his songs to honor martyrs of the freedom struggle, to motivate the youth, the Singhs and Kaurs, as he'd call them.
It's like he knew that different people are reached in different ways. Some people respond to a logical argument in an interview. Others need to feel the emotion in a song.
And that's such a core part of Punjabi culture, right? The Dadi tradition of singing ballads about heroes and defiance. He was doing the modern version of that. It was the exact same work he was doing on his TV show, just on a different wavelength.
It all comes back to keeping the memory alive. Memory as resistance feels like the theme running through his entire life.
If you forget, they win.
Which brings us right up to today. Hansra is gone, but this story isn't over. There's a huge effort right now to make sure all that work, all that memory doesn't just fade away.
This is the really crucial next chapter. It's the moment his work officially transitions from being content to being history. It's a massive project with the Sikh National Archives of Canada.
And his family is directly involved.
Yes, his son, Harpreet Singh Hansra, has loaned the entire collection. And we're not talking about a small box of tapes. It's hundreds of tapes, rare documents, recordings of political discussions, pieces of history that might not exist anywhere else.
It's kind of terrifying to think about what happens to old tapes if you just leave them in a basement.
It's the digital dark age. It's a real thing. That magnetic tape flakes away, the audio gets distorted, the video gets snowy, and then it's just gone forever. Digitizing this isn't just about storage. It's an act of rescue.
So by digitizing them, they're making sure that testimony we talked about earlier, it actually survives.
Exactly. It becomes a primary source. Imagine a historian 100 years from now trying to understand the Sikh diaspora in the 1990s. These tapes, this will be their window. They capture the raw emotion, the organizing, the hope, the anger.
The sources mention the website, sikhnationalarchives.com.
Yeah, and it's so important because they're not just showing off this collection. They're making a call to action.
The basement check.
The basement check.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. How many of you listening right now have parents with a box of old VHS tapes in the garage? Tapes of weddings, parties, community events from the 80s or 90s.
And you just think it's an old home movie, but there could be a speech, a protest, something on the news in the background. Right. You could be sitting on history and not even know it.
That's the thing. People are almost certainly sitting on history. And if it's not preserved, it just evaporates. Handra's legacy is becoming a catalyst for the whole community to value its own history.
So let's zoom out. We look at this life. The journalist, the singer, the activist. What's the big takeaway from the life of Sardar Sukhminder Singh Hansra?
For me, it all comes back to that phrase, media warrior. We think of warriors with weapons. But his life proves that a struggle is also fought with microphones, with cameras, with songs.
The battle for the narrative.
Exactly that. He understood that if you let someone else tell your story, they will either write you out of it or they'll get it wrong. By seizing the microphone himself, by building his own platforms, he carved the Sikh narrative into the historical record.
And that idea you mentioned, that truth becomes legacy.
When a voice is preserved, the nation it speaks for can't be erased. He proved that one person with a deep conviction and a tape recorder can stand up against silence.
That is a powerful place to end. It really makes you think about all the content we create and consume today. We're all leaving these digital footprints, but are we leaving testimony?
That's the question, isn't it? His work had a purpose beyond just getting clicks or views. It was for survival.
So here's a thought for you listening. Take a look in your own home. Ask your family about those old boxes of tapes. You might have a piece of history gathering dust in your attic. And if you want to see what this preservation looks like, check out sikhnationalarchives.com.
It's a shared responsibility, really. It starts with all of us.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a powerful look at how a voice can become a legacy and how a reporter can become a warrior. We'll catch you on the next one.